All right, hello everybody. Thanks for having us here. Let's start off. I'd like to see a show of hands. Are there any fans of Ghost of Tsushima here? Yeah? Oh, I see quite awesome. A lot of hands up. That's fantastic. Well, so if you're familiar with the game, you know that Jin Sakai's tale, it's truly an epic one. He began against insurmountable odds in attempting to defend the island from an invasion. He found allies to help him along the way. And he ran into many challenges and failures as he continued his personal journey to become the Ghost of Tsushima. Now, part of Jin's journey involved embracing new ways of thinking and new ways of working, and that included using his ghost weapons. Now, Jin understood the value of these unconventional weapons and how they helped him on the battlefield, even if those around him didn't understand the value in his approach. Now, it's possible that within your own organizations, new technologies like GraphQL can be viewed like a ghost weapon. You know, new, unconventional, maybe a little bit terrifying. And what we've learned is that when wielded properly, GraphQL becomes a powerful weapon for change. GraphQL is currently positioned to be a key tool in PlayStation's technological arsenal. Now, we're not engaged in an epic battle for our lives, and we didn't have to forego our honor, well, at least not entirely, to achieve our ends. But it has taken us time to hone our weapon. So today we'd like to take you through some key moments in our journey. We'll start at the beginning. We'll talk through our initial quests, some of the challenges we faced along the way, which gave us the experience we needed to level up, and then some thoughts on what our next act looks like. So first, let's start back at the beginning. The year was 2018, and PlayStation was finalizing plans for the launch of the PlayStation 5. Now, new console generations provide new opportunities for us to deliver new experiences to delight our users. And PlayStation 5 was the first time that we had an opportunity to deliver a truly connected experience for our users across all of our devices. And from an engineering perspective, this was very ambitious in that we were building new experiences for console, web, and mobile all at the same time. It was a time of rapid development, and many new technologies were being evaluated across all of these different devices. And one early exploration included bringing GraphQL to the PS5. Now, as powerful as the PS5 is, as an application developer, you're working in a very highly resource-constrained environment. Every last drop of the GPU, CPU, and memory has to be dedicated to gameplay, because that's what users are there for. And so introducing the graph into this unique, resource-constrained, and at the time, ever-evolving environment, it just proved to be too challenging. Too many new changes, too much new architecture. We had to reduce scope to realize these experiences. And so GraphQL was removed from the scope of the initial PS5 launch. And we got rid of it in favor of relying on the standard REST API call patterns that were well tested and well proven at the time. So thank you. That was our presentation today. We actually have a lot of extra time, so maybe we can take some Q&A. I don't know. Well, that could have been the end of our journey, but it wasn't. Was it, Bhumik?
It certainly wasn't. And we are very crafty and scrappy, aren't we, Mike? So Jin Sakai realized that in order to accomplish his goal, he has to shift his strategy. He would not alone win over the imperial palace, and he has to, no matter how good the samurai he is. He has to find the allies, and he was convinced that just like we were, that if you can harness the usefulness and the powers of GraphQL, we just need to shift our focus area a bit. So our journey took us to a different part of the island. As they say, if you want to walk faster, walk alone. If you want to walk further, you walk together. Jin learns to find allies, and not just any allies, the right ones, the ones that are aligned with his goals, the ones that can give him strategic wins. And similarly, when we started our journey for GraphQL at PlayStation, we realized our first and foremost challenge was finding the right problem to solve. Innovation doesn't start with the most complex solution. It actually starts with the first battle that you choose to fight, where your gains are tangible and your risks are manageable. We needed to find the right use case for GraphQL. And we had plenty of options. But if we ended up picking the wrong one, our journey would have been much harder. We needed to find the right use case where we could demonstrate the benefits of GraphQL imminently, and you could see the powers that it can bring to our platform. So how did we find the right problem? How did we define what a right problem is? The answer came to us in form of a haiku. In Gene's case, his first allies weren't the most powerful warriors, but they were actually people that he met along the way who could teach him new techniques, sabotage, stealth, making most of your environment. Similarly, our GraphQL journey took a similar approach. Instead of diving into deep, complex solutions, we found a small but a well-defined scope of use case where we could immediately show its strengths, leverage and demonstrate the promise of technical experience that GraphQL can bring in. The shallow end of the pool allowed us to innovate quickly, fail faster, experiment, pivot if you need to be. But from an organizational point of view, we weren't adding risk to other teams. It gave us the right flexibility to innovate on our end. And lastly, as we gradually grow and add more experience and expertise to this technology, it turned into an ally, and we wanted to make sure that we could truly harness it before we take it to a broader means. So as you see, the way we approach GraphQL, we saw it as a cohesive solution to our technical, organizational, and business challenges. And I'll ask you guys to kind of keep those themes back in your mind. As we show our challenges and our successes, you would oftentimes see how they relate back to these three themes. In PlayStation ecosystem, we are dealing with PS4, PS5, web, mobile, PC, portal, and each of our devices have very tailor-made experiences. But at the end of the day, we are looking for consistency and seamless experiences across this device family. And each of the devices have their own nuances. But instead of reinventing the wheel, every time we bring a new device to market, we wanted to leverage the flexibility that GraphQL framework gave us to simplify logic, bring those complex aggregated data patterns away from the clients, and reduce the overall overhead. Which is why I kind of feel like GraphQL is our stream of efficiency. It allows us to deliver these experiences at a much faster clip. As our teams expanded, we faced a different challenge. We needed to deliver consistent experiences without piling on that one single team to support all of these devices. We needed more empowered teams that can independently, self-reliantly go and build those experiences without adding more technical debt and also reducing dependencies at the same time. We needed to ensure that these teams can, while they're working on their own independent features and experiences, can still contribute back to a shared experience that works across these devices. And lastly, when it comes to work, it's always about the business. Our device landscape is always shifting, and the user's behavior differs from one device to the other device. GraphQL not just became a technical solution, but it was a strategic win. We were able to demonstrate that while we can iterate faster and deliver across all of these devices, we could still measure our KPIs, and we were delivering against growth. So we found those early technical wins also had a ripple effect when it came to business wins, because our innovation that deep end, at the shallow end of the pool, often led to deep returns. So when all of this came together, the right problem materialized for us was when we were delivering our retail experience on off-console platforms through our web and mobile channels. We brought in a new web store, a new mobile store, which were both native. And we overhauled our web offerings. We made them secure. We made them fast with GraphQL. We were able to build micro front ends, web applications, mobile applications, all while we centralized our business logic at the GraphQL layer. And we were able to aggregate complex data patterns to power our storefronts. The technical value was right there for us to unlock. When it came to organizational wins, our client teams actually drove the GraphQL adoption. It started with our client engineering and not the back-end engineering services team. And we were able to keep on add more value for our users without adding any dependency and be independent, which was a huge organizational win for us. And lastly, new storefronts will always bring more revenues. We were able to bring the right level of visibility to our projects and programs, and we were able to secure the stakeholder buy-in. All of this made perfect sense. But it's one thing to plan for it, and it's another thing to execute for it. And Mike will tell you all about it.
So with such a clear vision that was clearly outlined here and such clear value proposition for GraphQL, you'd think that would just be easy to do, right? Well, as you mentioned, one of the technical reasons that we brought in the graph was to tackle a particular unique technical challenge that we faced at the time in our web experience for commerce. There was a critical set of logic that existed on the front end that historically had been shared across all of our devices through a common library that was written in JavaScript. And this logic relied on leveraging local storage. But what we had discovered was that due to the varying amount and support for local storage across devices and browsers, that we exceeded the local storage limits for users that were actively engaged in our system. And what this meant was that our most engaged users had a fundamentally broken experience on our commerce experience for web and mobile. And so we had to find a solution for this. As we settled on Apollo Server as the foundation of our GraphQL platform, we saw the potential for a solution to this shared logic problem. We can take this logic off of the client and move it into the graph. And centralizing that should reduce our developer overhead, and it's going to simplify our overall solution space. So there's a lot of clear organizational benefit there. So quickly, our teams shifted from building single-page applications to building a GraphQL monolith that was going to support over 20 million monthly active users on web and mobile during a flagship moment in our company's history. Apollo Server is written in Node, and our shared logic is written in JavaScript. JavaScript's just JavaScript, right? Now, Node.js is a powerful runtime environment, and it really excels at serving compute-light, highly asynchronous processes. That's something that the graph excels at. However, as we started with our early load tests and as we moved on into production, we started to observe hotspots within our monolith under load. Tools like Datadog, Splunk, Grafana, and later Apollo Studio gave us the awareness that we needed to see where the hotspots were occurring and how they were manifesting during those periods of stress. For example, we were seeing increased event loop lag in Node, and we'd see increased amounts of garbage collection. And all of that ultimately manifested in increased latencies, which impacted our user experience. Now, horizontal scaling can address some of that, right? It can alleviate some of those concerns, but that comes at a cost. So it was clear that we needed to spend more time understanding more than just our graph, but also the inner workings of Node as well. So team members with deeper knowledge of Node took the time to provide training and level up those that had less experience building out high availability, high scaling Node.js services. And this example is taken from some training material that we had done internally to help team members get up to speed on how promises interact with the JavaScript event loop. For example, a developer might think that promises and async await in JavaScript just make your code asynchronous. But the reality is not that simple. Promises defer execution, which comes at the cost to the microtask queue. And if you're not careful, it's very easy to starve the JavaScript event queue by flooding it with microtasks. And as it turned out, that's exactly what was happening. We were facing a high amount of event loop starvation because of the heavy uses of promises across our resolvers and our data loaders. And this resulted in situations where the event loop was significantly delayed due to that microtask queuing. And going back to that common library, well, that library was designed to run on a single device for a single user. And while it was well architected for its use case, it did not translate well into a high availability Node.js environment. You can see like very deep call stacks here, resulting in some of that high amount of garbage collection that we're seeing. And so a platform like Apollo Server provides the solid foundation you need to be successful with the graph. However, as your resolvers become more complicated, as you're onboarding more use cases, and as you have more team members contributing to the graph, you're certainly going to reach a point where your knowledge of the platform needs to go deeper. Now, if you were to search online to find some information about the JavaScript event loop, there's a good chance you're going to end up on this MDN page. And I'd like to call attention to a paragraph, or that's just a few lines into this. I'm going to read it. Note, the details here are generally not important to most JavaScript programmers. The information is provided as a basis for why microtasks are useful and how they function. If you don't care, you can skip this and come back to it later if you find that you need to. In our experience, in order to successfully scale your graph to your enterprise, fundamentals are not optional. Don't skip this level of information. You are going to need it sooner or later. A strong software developer is one that is knowledgeable in at least one level deeper than the one that they work in on a daily basis. And that's as true when you're building the graph as with any other platform that you're going to work with. And when it comes to wider graph adoption in your enterprise, performance is quickly going to become a key part of that discussion. Organic growth will occur and introduce new challenges and opportunities, but the sooner you can set yourself up for success with a performant graph, the easier that conversation is going to be for you. You might know where the hotspots are, but in the monolith, those hotspots are going to impact the entirety of your graph. The benefits you've been able to realize by centralizing your complex aggregation patterns and by reducing the overall response time to your applications, that's easily overshadowed by those moments of reduced performance under pressure. Arming yourself with the necessary knowledge to be able to quickly assess and address these types of challenges is very important to your ability to scale out the graph within your organization. And finally, make sure that you leverage the graph to its strengths. Moving that complex logic off of our clients was absolutely the right thing for us to do. And the graph was instrumental in establishing the patterns we needed to make that possible. But what we failed to recognize at the time, that Node was not the best tool to use to implement that logic. And the graph isn't the right place in the architecture to put that logic. We compromised good software architecture in order to achieve our organizational and business goals. And it's critical that all three work together in harmony if you want to be successful in bringing your graph to the wider organization. But thankfully, these challenges and these experiences, they provided us the experience that we needed to level up.
Now that you have a sense of the challenges that we had undergone, it's very easy to understand the pride and the accomplishment that we felt when we kind of got to the other side of it. And the confidence that it gave both to us as a team and a platform owner, but also to our consumers. But Jin didn't remain the same warrior as he was at the start. Over time, he gains more skills, he adapts his tactics, and it becomes a much powerful warrior, capable enough to kind of face any of the formidable foes. And our journey of GraphQL pretty much followed the same journey. We started with smaller victories, but then we gained confidence, we gained skills, we gained expertise, and it finally brought that trust to teams that were working on the platform, the consumers, the services, and our stakeholders all bought and realized the trust in the platform. However, it wasn't a smooth sailing. As Mike pointed out, there were early bottlenecks. And this, while GraphQL wasn't the root cause of it, but oftentimes the performance of a platform is attributed to the technology that it backs. And in this sense, GraphQL wasn't looked or perceived as a trustful ally that would scale and provide a complex aggregation that you need. It was far from true, but we realized that we had to go back and regain the trust and put in the time and the energy to deeply understand the intricacies of our platform. And it wasn't just learning more about GraphQL or mastering a skill, but it was more about identifying how it works within the wider PlayStation ecosystem. And through our sweat and perseverance, very happy to say, and some of the members are here, that we were able to kind of finally push that bar enough where our performance improved by more than 70%. Our P95s came down by significant range, and we finally were able to build that trust in the platform, that this is a platform that we could go and scale it up, handle the load that we needed to, and it can provide consistent and reliable results. Next step, trust always breeds growth. If you trust a platform, you will start seeing more people adopting that platform. And this was true both for within our development teams, also within our stakeholders. The teams knew that we could handle the load, and the consumer team started looking at GraphQL as a promise that it could deliver on. And the first step for our growth started seeing with incremental updates, where we have, being in a retail experience area, there is always a first backlog full of features that we want to bring in because it's revenue impacting. So we started seeing more and more features come and adapt GraphQL as the choice of way to deliver that. Our next stop became, in our journey to widen our GraphQL adoption, became that we started to flex our arms and truly conquer the overall commerce realm. We started bringing tangential experiences such as PlayStation services, ability to sell directly hardware to our users, which went beyond our digital sales. So we started flexing within that domain and expanded. As our expertise and our experience deepened, so did our own ability to advocate GraphQL to other business units and use cases and parts of our businesses. It wasn't just a technical solution anymore. We started seeing GraphQL as a way that we could level up our entire platform and way that this is how we build our experiences. And we could see the early adopters can come and realize the immediate benefits of GraphQL. As Jin started expanding his influence around the Tsushima Island, so did we. We went beyond that initial retail experience to other experiences. We created a platform-first strategy. And we started off with web and mobile. Any new experiences, any new features that were built on those platforms, we worked very closely with those platform leadership and asked them to evaluate GraphQL as first design choice. We did numerous POCs, and one after the other, we kind of proved the power of GraphQL. And we were able to kind of convince them, and now it's become a platform of choice. We no longer have to go and convince adopters, but we see this as a de facto way of how they envision bringing their solutions to light. And oftentimes, while we keep our one eye on platform adoption and kind of growing the influence of GraphQL, we always have to keep one other eye on our short-term but equally important platform capabilities. You are investing in yourself. You need to make sure that your operations are also in line with your growth. We were able to triple our traffic, and that's almost like 100% growth in the last 3 years. But at the same time, we actually managed to reduce our cost by half. And we were able to demonstrate that your growth does not come at the cost, and they are not linear by far. The few green bumps that you see along the way, it's when we were still investing in our platform efficiencies, and we had to scale up for holidays or marquee events. But from last year, now that our platform is really rock solid, we don't even have to do that anymore. So while our traffic grew, our actual costs came down. And it's no surprise we had to adopt Federation. We've started supporting more than 15+ teams. We ran into release overheads. We have compute-intensive nature of Graph. It was only a matter of time before we started adopting Federation and started chipping away our Graph and make it more manageable subgraphs. But what we also realized is that as we created subgraphs, given the real-time computing nature for our pricing, our subgraphs were no longer shackled by those computations. We didn't throw more pods at those subgraphs, but we were still able to bring our P95s down by 87%. So it became a very important key for us to sustain growth. As we get more people in, we don't need to spend more money on our pods or infrastructure. And lastly, no battle is fought alone. I said this earlier, that if you want to walk further, you have to walk together. And you have to embrace the entire organization. And how do you welcome an organization? Right from the onset, we were really focused on contribution-first mindset. we followed the principles of open source, and we wanted to make sure our repository speaks the same. We were able to grow the number of contributors to our repository. We are standing at about 150 contributors now. And I just have the first README, which kind of shows a screenshot of how we've kind of focused not how to consume GraphQL, but how to contribute first, which is a slight shift in mindset. We invested in our developer tools. Apollo Playground is a good example of it. But we also keep a very high bar when it comes to documentation. We are always focused on what can we do to make the developer onboarding easy if someone who's coming into GraphQL world for the first time. We put processes in place for our graph stewardship and governance. The teams would have to go through a feature impact analysis whenever they're making drastic changes or when they're looking to bring a big subgraph or a swath of graph to the platform. This allows us to kind of preach on what is a good schema design and how can you use your graph better. And this allows us, while we're still in a much, I feel the journey is much longer for us and the teams are not self-enabled yet to the degree that we would want, I still cannot underscore enough the importance of having a governance plan while you're looking to scale your graph. We looked at building consistent ownership when multiple teams are contributing to a graph. So we used GitHub, we used Slack, tags, everything, all the tools that were available to our disposal to make sure there is a consistent ownership when it comes to who owns what part of the graphs. And lastly, spread the knowledge. We've done an internal summit at our own company. We had almost 150 developers come and try GraphQL, and most of them were actually using Graph for the first time. And I want to give a quick shout out to Apollo folks too, because they came in and helped us with to create the material. But it is how we were able to truly democratize and build the community that we need, because we alone cannot push this. So where did all of this bring us to? And I have a GIF that kind of shows the growth of our graph in the last 4 years. But at the end of the day, we're supporting 60 million active users. We are still nascent in our federation journey. We have 4 subgraphs and kind of looking to build more. And our goal is to kind of grow 10 to 50x from now. And Mike's going to tell you all about it.
So as Bhumik mentioned, it's 5 years later now. We have a mature, proven architecture on console, and we have years of experience with GraphQL on web and mobile. Since our initial launch, our device landscape, it's already expanded. PlayStation games are now available on PC, and we've introduced the PlayStation Portal. And supporting an ever-growing number of devices demands new ways of thinking about the platform. And PlayStation is more than just our devices. We're continually expanding and evolving the capabilities of PlayStation as a platform as well. That's where domain-driven design really provides us the ability to create clear bounded contexts for business capabilities, ensuring loose coupling across those domains. It also provides us the framework that we need to ensure that things like expensive logic stay off of our clients and in these properly bounded contexts. A well-defined architecture helps your developers understand where their pieces in the puzzle fit. And our client experiences are just inherently cross-domain. And as our device landscape continues to expand, we can't keep loading the weight of those experiences on our domains, and we can't keep replicating these complex aggregation patterns across all of the new devices that we bring into the fold. And our devices are very long-lived. A console lifecycle is 10 plus years. Once we put that console out there, we're going to be living with the architectural decisions we've made there for a very long period of time. And we see the graph as a powerful tool to help us break that generational cycle of the platform and be able to more easily support more new devices as we bring them in. And we think the graph is really a key part in that. Becoming that consistent layer as the translation between our data domains and our clients. And we also understand that not all of our clients and not all use cases are appropriate for GraphQL at all points in time. So what we're really looking at is seeing how we can make the federated graph be the core of and the architectural backbone, regardless of what communication patterns any of our devices are going to need to communicate with. The graph is well positioned for success at PlayStation, and as far as we come into our journey, as Bhumik said, we're really just getting started. So, like any good video game, we're going to end this presentation on a cliffhanger. I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. Please catch us afterwards if you'd like to discuss more about our journey. And happy gaming, everybody. Thank you.